16 armies. Without further ado, now call on the Prime Minister to conduct the Norvice case in 7 minutes. You're here.
We think that in a post-conflict society, the labor soldiers have nothing to rely on, no organization to rely on, and they tend to belong to other rebellion organizations like ISIS or something like that. However, in our project, we can provide good job and good salary and good shelter for that kind of soldiers and relieve their dissatisfaction about their situation. That's why I'm proud to propose this motion. I have two things to talk about. Firstly, I will talk about why in their paradigm those kinds of soldiers tend to lead to the new rebellion organization. And secondly, I will talk about in our paradigm, it is more likely to lead to the inclusive situations. But before that, let me set up this debate. So, what kind of context are we talking about? We are talking about the past Cambodia and Somalia, Rwanda, Egypt, Libya, where that kind of conflict have finished, and in that kind of nations, UN or PKO and NATO are already invaded. So let's move on to my first argument. No, thank you. So why, in their paradigm, those kinds of soldiers tend to lead to the new rebellion? So first of all, we think that those kinds of soldiers have the hatred to that kind of government just after that kind of conflict have finished. This is because until a few days ago they have killed each other with a lot of hatred. No, thank you. So we think that in this situation, ignoring that kind of soldiers without any help leads to a lot of struggles. So we think that there are two problems. No, thank you. So firstly, we think that they tend to commit crimes in that society. This is because since they have no organizations to rely on, they don't have much money and they don't have the place to live. So this means that they have nothing to do but to commit a crime and kill people and a lot of money from that kind of person with his physical strength, which are trained in their military training. No, thank you. So the second harm is that we think that they tend to participate in another rebellion group if they have the opportunity to that kind of things, because they still have the hatred to that kind of government. And also at the same time, other terrorist organization groups like ISIS will agitate and recruit that kind of rebel soldiers. So we think that this leads to new rebellion, the flourishing of the new rebellion group. Yes.
But that's the argument for giving shelter to these people in a package of anti-rebellion organizations or something, right? Why you have to oblige these people to work in a very dangerous situation, furthermore give them a gun and expose them to the danger of conflict again?
So we think that in the post-conflict society, nations does not have the enough national budget to provide enough shelters or enough food or that kind of thing or that kind of things. So, and at the same time, think of the militaries. They have lost a lot of soldiers, and those kinds of military have to recruit new soldiers in order to protect that kind of countries. So we think that the government has only afforded to provide money for that kind of military. So let's move on to my second argument.
Before that.
What happens in our paradigm? No, thank you. So we think that in our paradigm, inclusion will be achieved. So first of all, what is the character of the soldiers which are recruited in our paradigm? So we think that they have the dissatisfaction with the government. This is because they have been suffering from the poverty from their younger ages, or they couldn't receive enough education from their young age and cannot keep enough life standard. So this is the reason those kinds of soldiers rush into the rebellion groups or rush into the terrorist groups like ISIS. So we think that rather in our paradigm, we can solve these problems. So we think that when they are recruited and participate in that kind of military, the government have made an effort to relieve the antagonisms for that kind of people and provide education or moral education. This is because in order to so that the military will work, unity is directly connected to that kind of military efficacy and strength. So we think that the government has an incentive to satisfy the soldiers' desire. So what kind of things the military will provide? So as I explained, there will be basic education for that kind of soldiers, and also sufficient and constant salary in order for that kind of soldiers. And by using this, they can earn very constant living. And also, they can have enough food and shelter to keep on living. And it is less likely that those kinds of people who have enough shelter and enough food will return to rebellion groups or return or committing crime again. So for these reasons, I'm proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your speech. Now call on the Leader of the Opposition to deliver his speech. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, our goal is to further the integration of the people, maintaining peace that the government wants to protect. We're happy to take this motion once the violence is out of people's blood, once the generations and hate have passed. But we're not happy to take this motion when it's in a post-conflict society, when they can't even talk to each other, when they can't even cooperate with each other. We don't understand how this can happen within such situations. We say that this debate is a comparative of what creates a better society. In the long run, we're happy to oppose this motion. I have two main points in my speech. First of all, we're going to talk about the context and why post-conflict society does not mean peace. Second of all, what happens when you put two opposing conflict groups into an army and how that affects society. But before that, I'm going to talk about the counter model and also a clarification to the opening government. This is also going to be my rebuttal. But first of all, the opening government seems to be concerned about the reintegration of soldiers. The solution, however, is not to put these people into armies that are violent, that are there to kill people once again. We say that is going to be our extension within our speech. We're happy to introduce government programs to reintegrate these people within society. If that is their main concern, we can provide that on our side as well. We say that we're happy to provide them with jobs, with education. We say that it's extremely possible that's what's happening in the status quo. We can combat crimes in this situation as well, and the OG stance does not stand because those crimes don't exist in reality. We say that army is something that's a violent position that does not promote peace within its soldiers. So that was my rebuttal to their side. So first of all, the context of this motion and why post-conflict society does not mean peace, but before that, opening.
So will you also take away the right of these people to vote because their vote could cause conflict in this society?
We say that this is a comparative of which side is better. We say that, we're not talking about how they're going to affect society, but how it's going to be damaging to them and also the society within that framework. So first of all, we say that post-conflict societies does not mean that it's a peaceful society. First of all, when it has ended, it is likely that it was forced to end then because of lack of money or because of lack of resources. Or secondly, it's going to happen by only the top leaders and not because of the rebel groups. And we say that the people involved in this negotiation are leaders, and most people, most civilians and also most rebels are not satisfied with the situation. We say that at the point in which the majority of citizens and furthermore the soldiers still have hate, still have antipathy towards this group, it's a very unstable situation. We want to talk about the soldiers massively angry, massively violent, fighting on the front lines against the opposition side. We say that these soldiers are the people willing to sacrifice their lives for this conflict, willing to sacrifice their families to fight for this opposition. We say they cannot easily get over the hate, and they're easily get angry towards the opposition. We say it's not safe to put them in an environment where their enemies are a few months ago, are right in front of them. Furthermore, it will create conflicts all over again, which I'll move on to my next point. I want to clarify the uniqueness of rebels. We say it's highly unlikely that they're going to be satisfied with the conflict resolution, especially if it was decided by a political leader out of their power. The hate and antipathy will still exist in their blood. The feeling of revenge towards the opposition group is going to be still high. We say they have no aversion in killing oppositional individuals, and that is exactly why the conflict was so bad, right? I.e. Rwanda, i.e. Egypt. That is why the conflict had to be ended by some third party. We say that those people are incredibly unstable, incredibly oppositional, and we need to contextualize that. Second, what happens when you put two opposing conflict groups into an army? First of all, we're happy to reintegrate civilians as we send their counterpart. In the state army, it's easily to get violent, right? Because you probably have a lot of weapons within that situation, and seeing the nature of being violent to enemies, we say that's easy to build tension again within a group. Another conflict within an army, that is to say, the people who used to be opposition are going to be right there beside you. But why is that so bad, right? Because the nation values an army very much. When you see people within the United States, they're extremely proud of their country, they're extremely proud of their army because that's what represents their country. We say that when, let's say a fight happens within that army, it's probably going to be media broadcasted because you have these weapons, or it's probably let's say someone blew off someone else's limb. It's going to be broadcasted, people are going to see that, it's going to be majorly covered by the media. Tensions within the army leaks into society, divides the nation. Again, because civilians see these fights by soldiers as an extension of the conflict that used to be, and brings back the antipathy by the army, which is representing the state. We say that at the point in which they are representing a state, we cannot risk to take these people creating conflicts once again. Secondly, we want to be realistic about how violent these rebels are. They are fueled by hate. The hate does not go away just because the war has ended. not something that the government should support. So what do we tell you in our speech today? First of all, we told you that the context of how this happens is because the context in which a post-conflict society has happened, we want to contextualize it in a way in which the government needs to support, they need to support these soldiers and furthermore create more benefits for their side. But yes, Sosan.
If hate is so huge for these soldiers under your side of the house, how are you ever going to be able to reintegrate them within your site?
Here.
We have been doing that within other situations in the status quo. Like we see Rwandan people didn't put the two groups together in an army, and they have been able to overcome those things. For example, we don't see why this is the only choice in which you can actually create peace within society, create reintegration, not only within the soldiers, but also within civilians, within society that have oppositional ideals, right? We say that we need to understand that a post-conflict society is something that is unstable, something that is easily agitated once again by small actions, especially when you think about the army, which is representative of the state, and those people are extremely violent. We say that the hate and antipathy is once again, the people have to remember once again that they used to be a post-conflict society, especially when it is immediately after some kind of proposal that is out of these people's power. We say that this is the only way we can promote peace. We are happy to stand in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. Now I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to deliver a piece within 7 minutes. Come here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker. I have two things to talk about. Firstly, about why including rebels in military is far safer way, effective way, rather than let rebels to the society and ignoring the rebels to the society where the discrimination and antagonism is flooded. And secondly, how in their paradigm, post-conflict society will be more devastated situation. But before that clarification, so opening government said that the rebel have the antipathy and unification with the civilian is enough. However, we think that cannot be the sufficient reason to oppose this motion. Because this debate is not about we force the rebels to participate in the military in the first place. We think even in our paradigm, if a rebel can successfully participate in the society, as they said, it is okay. We did not forcibly hire that rebels in the first place. However, the target of the rebels in this debate is that the rebel who are rejected by the society, we think that is extremely important. And moreover, they said as such, so deceiving cannot be the sufficient reason to abandon the rebels and reveal most innocent citizens to the rebels and restart the conflict in the first place. Because anyway, in their paradigm, unfortunately, some rebels try to provoke the rebellion against the government. However, the comparatively, people's incentive in the post-conflict area. We think that ignoring doing nothing to the rebels provoke massive amount of that danger to the society. Because uniquely, because this is a post-conflict society. Because even now, there are massive amount of provisional government and sects and terrorists in that area like the Syria. Because now there are many kinds of ISIS, Jabhat Fatah al-Sham or something like that. Because until several days ago, they are actually trying to kill each other. Therefore, we think that they have no choice but to commit a robbery and murder in order to maintain their living. Because in their paradigm, ordinary majority people do not want to hire and interact such past rebels in the first place. Uniquely because this is the post-conflict society. Because people are indoctrinated with the discrimination, antagonism, and so created artificially nationalism by the government, by the other sects. So therefore, we think that in their paradigm, even though that rebel tried to get a job in the corporation and tried to get an education and tried to participate in the neighborhood and establish a friendship with other civilians, many people tend to reject to do that and tend to segregate the rebels from themselves. We think that is far more pernicious because this will directly result in the antagonism for the rebels to the majority people. Therefore, we think the government is the most capable and suitable actor to enable rebels to be united to society. Because in the military, government have the strong power and strong authority to supervise and track down on any discriminative conduct inside the military. Because unity inside the military is directly connected with the efficacy and strength of the military. Therefore, if some people start to discriminate against the rebels inside the military, then the government can pressurize that people stop such stupid things. Therefore, governments and military make the massive efforts to crack down on the conflict and hatred which is embedded on the rebels in the first place. Legally or paradigm. Moreover, government provides sufficient and constant salary to the rebels. So opening government said this education is extremely important. However, the point is that rebels cannot get a job in the corporation in the first place. However, in our paradigm, government provides sufficient salary, constant salary to the rebels. Therefore, now such rebels do not have possibility to return to the crime and rebellion. That's why many governments under the status quo, many prisons are nationalized, and the government tried to fundamentally rehabilitate the prisoners and reunite the prisoners to the society. Therefore, in our paradigm, now rebels uniquely have the bond and attachment with the colleagues of the military, and now that rebels have the financial bond with the military and government. We think that is far more important. So maybe the second issue, but further, yes.
PM said government budget is constrained, therefore we can't give
Yeah, so
but you said now there are abundant.
This is a comparative debate. So this is a comparative debate. So we think that even though government's budget is limited, we think that the comparative government is a more capable actor to constantly feed the rebels in the first place. So moving to the second issue. So closing opposition said that the rebel organization have the justification if we hire such rebels. However, we think that terrorist conducts are not so changed in both paradigms, because even if closing opposition say that terrorists start to have the justification in their paradigm, that terrorists newly obtained the new rhetoric to agitate the citizens, because in their paradigm they can say as a majority people and majority government try to exploit us and try to plunder us, so let's start the terrorism, let's resist to follow the government's orders and legal framework. We think therefore the response of the terrorists do not change. However, the point is the rebels' response are changed in their paradigm, because in their paradigm, more rebels who are not the terrorists, who want to be united with government, will return to the terrorists and participate in the terrorist conduct in their paradigm, because there is the ISIS and Jabhat al-Sham and Assad government or extremist government in their paradigm. Therefore, the situation is fundamentally unstable, and the past malicious, some terrorists, minority terrorists, try to make the advantage to the rebels who are moderate and who want to reunite to the society by agitating your lovers, your parents, your friends are killed by such governments. So, however, now the government is weak. Therefore, now we can restart the conflict. So let's restart the rebellion. Therefore, thought that the rebels will start a rebellion. Therefore, with comparatively in your present, the situation is far more better. That's why I have taken this way. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. Now call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to deliver a case within 7 minutes. You're here.
Madam Speaker, I am not a Hutu and I am not a Tutsi, but I can imagine what it's like to have to sleep in an army barrack next to someone who raped your family member, who raped your sister, who killed your sister, who completely tortured your sister, and actually not want to actually feel some form of violence toward them, actually feel some form of revenge toward them. We think that these kinds of rebel people are not just your average people who are in those minority oppositions, in those pre-conflict, post-conflict societies, but they are people who are very passionate about this, who have a large hatred for these kinds of people, and we think that because of that, there's a very large likelihood that when they do have a chance to strike against these kinds of people, when they do have weapons in their hand, it's very likely that more conflict will occur, and that will further divide that nation, and for that reason, we're very happy to oppose. We're going to talk about two main things coming from Deputy Leader of Opposition. We're first going to talk about how the media is going to paint these kinds of situations in, like, for example, the broadcasting, but secondly, we're going to take them at their best case and say, even if the violence does not happen in this kinds of armies, why inherently by the hierarchy of the army, this will lead to problems and this will lead to these kinds of media demonizing these kinds of situations. Before that, let's go on to the rebuttals to the first slide. Closing that.
Okay, so even to the extent that there is hatred, that will exist regardless on either side of the house. On your side of the house, you get Hutu people like dogging these Tutsi people up, and won't that inflame violence even more?
Wait, why are we locking them up, right? Like, we're just saying that we're happy to give them jobs, so I'm going to talk about my first rebuttal. Like, that's a really weird counter-narrative. Okay, so first of all, let's go on to rebuttals, right? First of all, so they want a justification as to why we're not going to ignore these rebels, and these rebels will not be rejected by the society. So first of all, we think it's a basic fear of the motion that considering the fact that this state is willing to, for example, integrate them into their army, integrate them within their kind of nation, that this nation as a state and as a government does have an incentive to reintegrate these kinds of people within their nation and within their army, right? So we think that because of the fact that first of all, this government did to begin with agree to a peace deal, but furthermore, because of the fact that they don't want the international perception of being divided, or furthermore, they're just tired of fighting, we think the government does have an incentive to actually reintroduce these people into society, give them education, give them jobs, give them government-run jobs where they can get money for their family, where they can get money for themselves. So we think that it's a very plausible situation that this will happen, right? But secondly, because to talk about closing government, we think that the idea that we're not going to allow people to vote is actually totally out of characteristic, right? This is a debate about whether or not you want to put these people in a violent situation where it's prone to get violent or not, or where it's prone to have massive amounts of conflict, and we think that's very different from merely having a vote and having a deadline within your politics. So let's go on to the two characterizations coming from Deputy Leader of Opposition. So first of all, how is this going to be painted, for example, when fights do occur within these armies, right? We think that what's going to happen is that the media is going to pick up on these fights within these armies because it's inevitable that they are going to happen, considering how much hatred and antipathy both sides still have towards each other, and they're going to use it to demonize both sides, right? So we see that first off, in a post-conflict society, there tends to be a split in the media. Then the split in the media is built upon that side who won and the side who lost, and there's still a divide between how that media does perceive each side. So we think that what's going to happen on both sides, first of all, the people who, for example, are the majority, are going to paint these minority people as being very violent, as being prone to, for example, having anger within them. And we think that because of that, that's what's going to cause, for example, happy, that does not have that much evil will within them, we think that's still the very premise that, for example, the army is based on a massive rigged hierarchy where someone has to stand on top of someone else, where someone has to boss someone around, but furthermore, it's also based on massive conformity where it is grouped together. We think that it's very, very easy for the media to demonize this in some way, to say that, yes, just because of the fact that this majority leader is on top of some of the rebel leaders, that means the fact that the government still prioritizes those majority people comparatively to those minority people. Because as the open government has thankfully conceded to us, a lot of people do think of the army being part of the government. They do see it as attached to the government, attached to state, right? So when, for example, the media can easily pick up this rhetoric as saying the state not only prioritizes you in that army, but they also see you as less in their state as well, we think that's going to lead to, first off, the minority being massively angry towards that state even more, and leading to a further divide within that nation, and them not wanting to actually talk to that large majority. But secondly, we think also the majority is going to pick up on that and believe the fact that they don't have any will to integrate within their kind of society, to have the people within that society, right? So we think that through that what's going to happen is that even if there is no violence, due to the innate hierarchy of that army, that's going to lead to a divide on the nation, and the media will corrupt immensely down. So, secondly, how is this going to lead to the marginalization of these people very practically, right? We think that the media is a very, very easy way to influence these people, especially in post-conflict societies where things are like very messy, right? So we think that when, for example, these people in these majorities do see the fact that there is, for example, a divide within that army and a fight within that army, but there's a hierarchy within that army, that's going to lead a lot of people to first off marginalize these kind of people further even more, but furthermore, it's going to lead to a massive amount of antipathy for those situations, right? So we think that what's going to lead to, it's going to lead to discrimination within those schools, it's going to lead to discrimination within that country, it's going to lead to a country that is further divided. So yes, what are you? Closing government, we do concede the fact that your right to vote, for example, may, for example, change the course of society, may lead to further tensions, right? But it's a lot different of, for example, a parameter, and a lot different of a measure when you actually give these people a means to fight for these things, to actually be violent with these things, and actually give media a rhetoric in and of itself of the army to actually antagonize these kinds of majority and minorities, even in these situations where people do have the best goal in mind. And for that reason, we're very happy to oppose.
Thank you for your speech. Now I invite the member of the government to deliver a case witness evidence. Right here.
We agree with the context that opening opposition gave us, that these post-conflict societies are unstable and that we need to get out of it. But what opening opposition and probably closing opposition too fail to tell us is how do we get out of that post-conflict society, and why are those soldiers ever going to be able to reintegrate back into society if we don't take this motion? What will extend to you from closing government is firstly, why it is particularly important to include these people in the army, which is an institution of the state, which is the right of individuals to participate in. But secondly, what happens in the long term, especially what is the incentive of these soldiers, what occurs in the army, how does this actually work? Before that, one rebuttal to the extension that came out of Deputy Leader of Opposition. So Deputy Leader of Opposition demonized the media, right? But firstly, we think that the hatred that exists within these soldiers and people who participated in this army as rebels will continue to exist regardless. Why is it worse under their side of the house when these people cannot go into the army? This is because the media takes up stuff like the government is still marginalizing us. We are still the minority. They're not allowing us to be full citizens of the state because we were in the past rebels. We think that that is an even worse because that means that this rhetoric can be taken up by people who say that this is bad, right? But secondly, to the extent that there is conflict outside of these armies, right? Well, we think that's actually worse because the image is that the majority is still oppressing the minority when the army that is completely composed of majority people who are not rebels actually oppresses the minority. We think that that is more likely to lead to the tensions that they actually want. But we doubt their characterization of the media being so horrible, right? Because we think that in a post-conflict society, most people want to get out of that conflict. Therefore, they don't want media that foments the conflict because they're already tired of it, and media doesn't have any incentive to portray it like that because people don't want to listen, right? That kind of media will not sell, which is why Deputy Leader of Opposition's extension do not really make sense. So firstly, why is it important to have these people in the army? We think that participation in the army is a symbol of citizenship, and that is why this is particularly important. So in every single case of marginalization and discrimination that occurred in every single state, for example, in the United States of America, where women were not allowed to participate in the army, or African Americans, or Asian people, when all of these people were not participating in the army, they were second-class citizens, right? What they're doing on their side of the house is treating these rebels as second-class citizens. They are saying that these rebels, because they were rebels once, because they made a bad choice, can never participate in the army, which is a state institution that is particularly important. But secondly, we think it's also important to include these people in the army, because these people have only known war, right? They've grown used to war, they've grown used to conflict. Oftentimes, they grew up in this conflict, right? They were probably like recruited by these people as like child soldiers and forced to fight. And in that context, these people often have things like PTSD. They only know how to fight, they don't have skills, and that's why they're going to be harmful if they're left outside of the army, right? We think that we need to include these people because by including them in the army and forcing them into this rigid structure of waking up at 6 o'clock and going to bed at like 9 o'clock, we think that that structure is more likely to be able to rehabilitate these people and make it easier for these people to enter society. But the third reason that this is important is because this says that the government trusts people who were rebels in the past, right? This is a symbol of trust from the government to the people. Because now the government says that we trust you to keep these weapons and protect our people. We trust you to be in a position of power, and we think that that trust is particularly important in this context because right now there's a situation of severe distrust between the army and the rebels, right? And we think that that is what is corrosive, and that lack of trust is what leads to even more conflict in the long run. But fourthly, we think it's better to keep these people under the watch of the army, right? Because let's go into my second point about what actually occurs in this army. We think what happens is that in this army, oh shoot, I didn't time it. Before I go, closing off.
Then, if the army composed of majority spoken, why don't you replace the national army with neutral international soldiers, or PK or something?
Because in the long term, we do have to integrate these people back into society. We think it's better to do it from the start. So secondly, does anyone have a timer? I'm sorry, I forgot to time. Okay, ignore that. Secondly, what is it that actually occurs in this army, right? We think that, unlike what opening opposition said, we can make sure that in the high level of command, there are also rebel soldiers who used to be like rebel leaders in the past. We can make sure that these rebel soldiers are integrated into units with like 10-man units, for example, with people who were in the army in the first place. That means that military mechanisms for resolving conflicts, like court-martial or putting people in the brig if they cause conflicts, or for example, going to these former rebel commanders in order to resolve the conflicts that they have, those kinds of mechanisms can work internally and can be shut out from media influences because all of this will be resolved within the army instead of without, which is what happens under their side of the house. But what is the incentive of these soldiers, right? Because we doubt that these soldiers are so hateful and so angry. We think the reason that these people go into the army in the first place is because, as I already said, they were abducted from youth, but secondly also because they didn't really have any other economic opportunities. That's why the army looked like a better option for them in comparison to working in a dead-end job that wouldn't really help, right? So we think that that means that these people are going to be grateful to the government, but more likely it's going to be that these people will be more likely to integrate. So then also, what is it that these people do in the army in the first place, right? Because we don't think in post-conflict societies that people are suddenly going to go into another war and they're going to be like really severe, really bad situations with a lot of conflict, right? We think it's more likely that in this war, these people are going to act as a police force. They're going to give out aid. They're going to help with the reconstruction of these buildings. We think that this is much more likely, much like the self-defense force does in Japan, right? We think this is much more likely because the state doesn't have any more power to go to war with another country or any more reason to do so because it's in post-conflict state, right? Why is it good that these people are still included in this case? This is good because what happens when society sees that soldiers who used to be rebels are helping with reconstruction? What happens when society sees that these people are helping to defend us wearing the arms that we actually have? This is better because now the society thinks that these people actually have an incentive to defend them. But we think that furthermore it's better for the soldiers themselves as well, right? We think it's not likely that conflict is going to occur within this army because you're going to be eating out of the same pot. You're going to be defending each other's backs. You're going to be helping each other with that same brick and raising that same brick together with a former rebel soldier. So that means there's more likely to be trust within the army, which is particularly important in this context because if you don't have that trust and if you have corrosive influences of these people being opposed to each other and directly opposed, that's extremely bad for getting the long-term trust that's actually necessary. But what also happens to the rebels themselves, right? We think that they're not just grateful, but they're also proud. There's a sense of patriotism that is raised within these rebels, because now these rebels think that they are representatives of the state. They get to wear the insignia of the state on their backs. They are a full-fledged member of the state. They get benefits. They are recognized. And we think that this is particularly important if you see that these soldiers are people who are disenfranchised, who feel that they were left out of the state before, and who feel it is necessary to be included within the state. That means that they have an incentive to defend the state, and they have less of an incentive to go back to their old instincts. Why is this particularly important, and why are all of these analyses important in this debate? Because even though we might have some conflict within these armies in the short term, but that can be resolved with their military conflicts, we think it's important that in the long term, we need to make sure that these people are included, and we need to make sure that this occurs fast, and we need to make sure that these rebels are formal first-class citizens to start with. We think that the practical and short-term changes we might lose out to some extent, but in the long term, we do sure as hell win over. So that's why we as closing government are extremely proud to propose.
Thank you for your speech. Now I invite the member of the opposition to deliver a case within 7 minutes.
なんかマイクが響きすぎると聞こえないから気をつけろ。
Yes, unity is important. Yes, we agree that interaction is something important. But after we officially label and distinguish the people to the pro-state or X-rebel, it's something that is a policy that utilizes X-rebel soldiers as a social battering ground that is going to be targeted for all those kind of discrimination to occur in society and still hinders the goal of unification in a society. The goal we depict as a closing government, a closing opposition, is a world where people are treated as equal human beings and not under the label of where you belong to or where you are actually going to work at. And this is the world we create in a closing opposition. So create such world, we're also going to provide alternative model in addition to the opening opposition. We'd rather have like those kind of UN army or like African Union, or even the case where it reaches like individual military, in order to be hired and be guaranteed or like responsible for the state's protection, but it's more capable and objective to begin with, right? Yeah. We're also happy to like, we're also happy to like not to hire any soldiers from like pro-state or like ex-liberal soldiers, because we think all those kind of conflicts is inevitably existing within the soldiers and the field as well, right? We think all those problems of having like all those kind of unification or like the symbol of majority having in the army is all going to diminish at the time when we take this model, where all those kind of our capable actors are replacing all those kind of soldiers instead of something like ISIS or all those kind of magical actors with opening government proposed, right? So, two extensions we provided. Firstly, on the analysis on how ex-rebel soldiers are going to be abused and marginalized within the army and society. And secondly, on the analysis, how this like blind labeling of the soldiers are going to directly inhibit the cohesion also within the societal level and beyond the level of how media is going to interact. So one by one. Firstly, on the analysis on how ex-rebel soldiers are going to be used as a social battering ground. But opening option talk about how tension is going to occur, but we never really explain how the tension is going to occur and why those kind of things are unacceptable, right? We as a closing option is going to provide how minority are going to directly reverse the position of marginalization, which we also think that the recruitment is going to be used as a tool to justify exploitation to recruit. Two analysis. Firstly, on the level of coercion. We believe that we have to notice that the rebel soldiers had to fight for themselves because they had some reasons, right? Such as like disrespect on the religion or marginalization of ethnicity, right? We think that there is a state's responsibility to incite the state's war and all those kind of war to happen in the very beginning. Ex-rebel soldiers are the ones who didn't have to fight if the state had a proper institutionalization and protection towards those people, right? So what happens when this motion is taken? It means that in vast majority of cases, all those kind of ex-rebel soldiers are poor due to the fact that the oppression that exists and due to the fact that they have to fight for their own sake, right? But recruitment has to take place, and in order to feed their family, in order to protect themselves, in order to restore and reconstruct their house and their own property, this is a case of forced choice where we have to opt into all those kind of systems where the state is going to offer you, because the state is going to offer a salary for itself, right? And this is a framework that is inevitably going to happen in the very beginning. So why is that harmful? On the second level, no, thank you. We think that those kind of ex-rebel soldiers are going to face extreme discrimination, right? Because when you're an ex-state soldier, and when all those kind of people who you have as a subordinate or like comrade are the ones who killed your family or like brutally destroyed your home and all the like property that existed, right? So even if it doesn't reach the extent where all those kind of soldiers are sent to like minefield or whatever, or all those kind of extreme cases where opening officer provided you, we think all those kind of problems are like bullying or negligence or like violence under the justification of correction is still going to be abhorrent and going to prosper within all those kind of framework, right? But still, even if all those kind of law inhibits to magically and perfectly prevent all those kind of issues, we think there are two harms that still accrue on our society. Firstly, backlash. We think that all those kind of majority people, like the ones who won this like, state's battle, are going to feel that all those kind of ex-rebel soldiers are all dangerous to a certain extent, and therefore we might like, put it into different sections, or we have to discriminate to a certain extent because they are having gun and they can be dangerous. But even all those kind of like minority soldiers who actually chose to opt in to recruitment are also going to be portrayed as the ones who betrayed your races or ones who betrayed your official existence or what you actually fought for. Right? All those kind of ex-rebel soldiers are going to suffer by the double the discrimination that's going to be given by both actors. But secondly, we think, closing guardians said that they're fighting for same and they're acting in the same job, so they'll be like they'll be a friend anyways, right? We don't think so because at the time when those kind of group exist, even if they work for same state, the line of order or the group that exists or all those kind of groups that they have to work for is going to be inherently different, right? The chain of like information or communication or like having those kind of corporate relationship within the groups and so on is going to be extremely difficult for all those kind of entities to take place. We think that's going to infringe on national security on the very basis, right? So in conclusion, why are they abhorrent? Because if you regard a post-conflict society, agreed premise and constitutional value, they have to respect every single citizen, right? They have to respect the dignity of individuals regardless of number they are thought to be important, right? So on the side government, they're still taking advantage of all those kind of vulnerable actors and saying that you have to be used as a tool in order to represent and symbolize the unity that we have taken. But this is nothing else than against the constitutional value or the equality that they have offered as a post-conflict society to begin with. But that's simply against what states are mandating to in begin, right? Opening up instead, it is abhorrent to reverse them into a bad position, right? We provided a mechanism of how it's going to occur and how it's going to be coercive. We provided a premise of why post-conflict society cannot do that. But we think the entire argument coming from the opening option is hinged upon our point of analysis as well. So before moving on to the last point, yes, opening.
So you said government exploit the rebels, but that is not the unique characteristics of the government. We think that even in your paradigm, social private actors like the corporation more exploit that people just because they are past rebels. However, comparatively, government is the more capable actor to properly deal with.
We think the problem is going to be even worse as time when they directly expose the battlefield or actually expose the brutal field of all kind of military, right? We can have a better system where like we can hire all of them and rather have support system to like educate them or make them able to live in a society with a better security which is a model already provided by the opening opposition, right? So second level, how is it going to be bad in the society, right? Well, the war which we have and war which they have on the side government is the war where soldiers who kill their family is going to officially walk and patrolling in a shopping mall like walking in and surveying you in the places of elections and so on, right? We think this is abhorrent because people will need to subconsciously recognize that we are different. People have to feel that all those kind of minorities are having gun and seeking for a chances maybe to revenge us or vice versa, right? At the time when all those kind of incidents of like shooting or like brutality happen, people will not think that this is a problem of individuality, but people will replace the issue that this is something that stems from racial ethnicity and so on, right? People will think that we are being revenged or we are being infringed because of the past conflict that happened before, right? Due to the fact that all those kind of majority-minority framework exists within those kind of states' army, within this is going to make a subconscious mind where people have to continuously stigmatize themselves or be conscious enough to say that we are all different, and therefore they have been conscious to all those kind of racial issues that happen within society. So without the framework of media, which is highly arbitrary, without all the societal framework, people will have a fear, people will be violent, and all those kind of harm is still going to happen inhibiting and coercion at the very beginning. So all those kind of issues, we believe that this is nothing as a counterproductive. On the model we provided, we offer a better world. Rest of our close.
Thank you for your speech. Now I invite the government whip to deliver a piece with the Senate. Let's hear her.
Firstly, I will rebuttal to the closing opposition, and secondly, I will rebuttal to opening opposition. And after that, what is the difference between both sides? Closing government leads to the solution, leads to integration, more integration in the society. We think that is beneficial in this debate. So, firstly, the rebuttal to closing opposition. They said firstly, the counter model, they will these labels will be included in UN Army. We think that is not beneficial because of two reasons. Firstly, because the UN Army does not exist for a long time, does not only exist in only short term. That is a crucial difference between the army. And secondly, these UN armies doesn't have trust from all nationals. That is a crucial difference between national armies and these UN armies. National armies has been trusted from all citizens. That leads to trust. That leads to integrate more and more integration of these people, as my partner clearly told you. No, thank you. And secondly, they thought about backlash, but we think that is we think firstly, this backlash doesn't occur. Why? Because these people, modern people, cannot identify with these people has been labeled, or these people not has been labeled something like that, because that difference is only, for example, ethnicity, something like that. They cannot identify which is who is the label or not. But that background, therefore, that backlash doesn't occur in this case. And secondly, we think that is irrelevant from in the first place, irrelevant to the motion, because this backlash still occur in both sides. We think that is not unique to the motion. We think that is irrelevant. And thirdly, the closing opposition don't talk about the solution of this integration. We think and also they don't talk about why this non-existence of choice. Non-existence of choice is more harmful than coercive structure. That is a whole of the closing opposition. No, thank you. And secondly, we do live up to. Yes, but secondly, we do live up to, and education doesn't occur in this context without representation. The representation of the nations, we think that is crucial, as my partner told you. No, thank you. And let's move on to my debate. Let's move on to the debate to opening opposition. They said the premise of premise of leader of opposition is that hatred doesn't. The hatred is something absolute and doesn't cure. So we think that is even if like these soldiers want to label in the armies, like at the cost of these families in the nations and so forth. We think that kind of people cannot endure the situation within this army, within this country itself. We think that situation is really unrealistic in this debate. And what is the what is the hatred? What is the character of hatred? In actuality, in reality, like the hatred existed in the conflict society. Why? Because hatred. Because this hatred occurred not because like these people were killed, these people's sisters were killed and something like that. These people have hatred to other countries' people because these people have been educated for a long time in order to protect their family, to protect their neighborhood. They have to fight against these countries. So that is the core of the hatred. No, thank you. Yes. So therefore, like this hatred doesn't easily occur after taking this proposal, and we think that's something counterproductive, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because these people will be like second level citizens. We think they cannot represent the nation. They cannot save their families, ladies and gentlemen. We think that frustration cause another cause another hatred. But it is the same mechanism of this hatred. We think so because of this frustration that we think that is counterproductive before that opening.
So we engage with your best case scenario where violence does not happen. So engage with the best case scenario of our side where violence does happen. How are you going to patch up that big hole made in that nation?
So the DLO talk about, yes, I will engage about DLO. DLO talk about like media pick up one person's rebellion and in this army, and that caused the big bang of society. The society will be people in society will be demonize each other or something like that. We think firstly without media picking up the premise, media picking up this situation, because media like government do not allow these media to report inside the armies, because for example like the Japanese media cannot report inside the Zietai and something like that, because the media government can do so. So and secondly, government can report that so the government can hide that, and also the government can report that this in this military these rebels and these rebels and not rebels can cooperate with each other. That is beneficial to both societies. And thirdly, even if we think that even if the big rebels. The fact that rebels occur in vast scale is unrealistic, ladies and gentlemen, because if rebels can gather in the army, which is subject to the government power, for them that it is more effective to gather in outside the country and make other rebellions. We think that is unrealistic. Because of this.